Narcissist mortification is described as being an intense fear that is associated with narcissistic injury and humiliation. I stumbled on this topic the other day as I was researching another topic within narcissism. Upon investigating this further, I realized that this was a common theme within the most recent narcissistic relationships I have personally had, and I wanted to share this with you as I feel that this topic will be of use to you as this topic needs to be addressed. For me, this topic made things so much more clear. We all want to figure out the last narcissistic relationship as we strive to understand so we can heal. For me, this study from Sam Vaknin was on point. I had my suspicions of what type of narcissist I was dealing with, but suddenly, reading this article from the psychologist and diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, Sam's article made sense as how I was treated. The guy was nice to me one minute, and then it was like a switch just flipped, as suddenly I was lower than an ant, crawling on dung, clinging to his shoe. He belittled me, condescended me, disrespected me through and through, and I had been through this before, but not like this. Many of us do go through the rinse and repeat of narcissistic abuse, and it's just the cycle of dating narcissists, one after the other. Sometimes even giving them the benefit of the doubt, we somehow end up turning back to them. However, when we finally do walk away, we walk away with the lesson learned. And those lessons learned cannot be unlearned. I don't think he, Mr. Good-looking, shy, and the silent type, understood just how far I had come along in my journey, my healing journey in this life. He had no idea that I knew him before I even met him. I was hoping that he would not be yet another narcissist. And I think he was just hoping that I would be the naive divorcee that just wanted a life partner and was desperate for one. I didn't see him coming, but I was ready for him. I was ready to take that verbal accusation and that venomous bite. I was impervious to his narcissistic ways this time, as somehow I knew he wasn't getting away scot-free. He was going to feel the burn as he tried to make me feel the burn. No, I was not seeking revenge. I was not playing games, as he'd like to call it. I just stuck to my healthy boundaries and honored me, myself, and I in integrity and love. I didn't have to do anything except just be me. This time around, I was prepared. The narcissist doesn't suspect that you are prepared. And please don't let them know until the appropriate time. Your preparation, the narcissistic recycling, is your time of awakening. And it is also when the narcissist finally has their comeuppance. I really had no idea God was going to use me in this way. I was so used to God allowing the narcissist to teach me a life lesson. I had no idea, or at least I never considered how God catches two birds with one net. I never suspected that God would use me or any of us, you who are strong in our healing, to judge the narcissist in a way that gives back to them every cruel and unholy thing that they have done to us and the people before us. Our love of them is their downfall. As God says, it is like pouring hot coals on their head. Their conscience will be their downfall. You don't have to do a thing. All you have to do is stay true to who you are and let the narcissist dismantle him or herself in front of you. Your caring nature causes them to stumble and fall. So here's a video for those of you who want to know if God does punish the narcissist for hurting you. Yes, he does. He uses the narcissist to bring you down to raise you up. And he uses you to rise up to bring the narcissist down to where they have no choice but to crash and burn as they are reduced to ashes. Their torment they put on us and other people is a torment that goes back to them through us, through a natural process called mortification. Narcissistic mortification is described as being intense fear that is associated with narcissistic injury and humiliation. It is a reaction when narcissists have to face your realization and their ideal view of self that contradict or contrast one another. So basically, when you stand your ground and do not cater to them at all, you do not relinquish your boundaries to them. This causes the narcissist great upset and goes against their ideal and perceived view of themselves and how they assume you perceive them. Especially if you go back to them a second time, a third time, a fourth time, and repeatedly. They assume that you've learned your lesson, but they don't assume that you are coming back better, stronger. At one time you were agreeable to their nature, and now you are no longer agreeable and stand against it. To them, they cannot grasp the concept. Why? Because they cannot self-reflect or self-assess. They think they are perfect. They think that you are in the wrong. They think that you are in the wrong. To them, you are the offending party, and they cannot convince you by bullying or charming you. They cannot tap into their toolkit of narcissistic tackle and use what they know against you. Their ways no longer work on you. And this leads to something that many narcissists are not used to feeling. Their reaction of the lack of your acceptance of them through acquiescence makes them take a step back, and they retreat into fear. This fear accompanies loss. This loss is that they lose touch with what they perceive to be their reality. They had your admiration. They have everyone's admiration. Now they have to face the reality that they tried to omit by ignoring it. Now they have your rejection, as rejection is what they fear. Narcissistic mortification is when the narcissist has a sudden sense of loss in the form of defeat, as everything they do is control-based. When you gain control and maintain control over you, your own autonomy, this sets the narcissist off balance. They then have to admit to themselves they have lost control over you, and they need you for a very specific reason. If they cannot control you, they cannot control themselves. This is exactly what is happening in narcissistic mortification. In my Udemy course in Lecture 2, I discuss the reasons why a narcissist has to maintain that sense of control at all costs. There is a specific reason, and that is that they must remain in control over themselves. They cannot do this on their own. That's why they need you. They need you to control so that they can remain in control of their own feelings. When they lose control over you, they have to admit defeat, and this is something the narcissist wants to avoid at all costs. It's detrimental that they remain in control. Have you ever had a narcissist say to you once you became intimate, or at least decided you guys were going to be exclusive to each other? Have you ever heard the narcissist say, "I own you"? This is not meant to be a romantic statement, and some of us kind of think, oh, that's a little cheesy, but you don't really mean that. And if you do, it's kind of sweet that you think of me that I'm your girl or I'm your guy. It's not sweet at all. They really do think that they can take ownership with you. They really believe this because you accept them and take them into your heart. And they now have direct ownership, or they feel that they have direct ownership of you and have every right to treat you as they see fit. They have every right in their minds to debase you, demean you, and treat you in a way that allows them to bully you and intimidate you as they feel that you are inferior. They truly feel that they have title deed in ownership over your body, your mind, and spirit. They emotionally control you by manipulating your emotions. Now, according to psychologist and self-diagnosed narcissist Sam Vaknin, narcissistic mortification is disorienting to the narcissist. It is extremely overwhelming as the individual begins to self-destruct. And I will go further to say that sometimes they self-destruct right in front of you. I've seen it. And it's scary and it isn't pretty. This can get quite ugly and intimidating. The narcissist destroys everything and everyone who is in their path. It's like there is a tornado. They're caught in the tornado as they are the tornado. And their verbal and physical aggression is just, it's like a whirlwind. Everything is upturned and nothing is left sacred and holy to them. The narcissist destroys everything and anyone who is in their path. They have nothing left to lose because to them, they have lost everything. They have lost control. Mortification happens when the narcissist cannot find any alternatives to force their objects or targets, also known as victims, to conform to their ways. You probably know that a narcissist cannot stand the word no, N-O. Even if you do not say the word no, but offer an alternative suggestion, a different one than what they were expecting, oh, look out, they will take that as a no. They will then dismantle in front of you if they are going through the narcissistic mortification phase. They will demask themselves. They are hoping to use intimidating tactics to get you to retract your no and relinquish your boundaries. Consider a compromise that includes doing what they want you to do. But when you do not give in, as this is what a strong, well-informed, educated, and empathic person does, and this is how we destroy the narcissist, by playing the narcissist at their own game without intending to. We do not play games. This is wrong. We simply follow the lead of the narcissist and treat them as they treat us. When we are strong in our resolve and can decide for ourselves what we want to do or don't want to do, this upsets the narcissist, as we hold steady to healthy boundaries that the narc just cannot break. They assume, well, this was easy before, what the heck is going on now? As we caved to their superficial charm, their silent ways, their humor and sarcasm. So why is it so hard now? The narcissist uses all their tact from their toolbox as it was all used on us before. And then it worked, but suddenly now it doesn't. They cannot figure out why their fishing lures are not working for us now. What happened? They just cannot figure that one out. To them, we must be playing games. No, we just came back smarter. Thanks to the last narcissist, or thanks to taking this one back several times before. According to Sam Vaknin, in the article entitled Narcissist Mortification, Shame and Fear, and I'll post the link to this really good article as I encourage you to read it. I'll post this in the description of this video. I'd like to share a quote that shame and fear reflects the activity of infantile strategies of coping with frustration or repression, such as grandiosity, and their attendant psychological defense mechanisms, end quote. What this means is that by you standing to your healthy boundaries, boundaries that the narcissist cannot dismantle through superficial flattery, charm, and the normal narcissistic techniques that they use, such as the love bombing and the hoovering, this no longer works. These things are all the narcissist knows, as these are things that are a part of their character. This is my interpretation, and for me it makes sense, as understanding the reasons why they resort to charming ways and the superficiality and the love bombing and the hoovering and the gaslighting and the projection and the lying and the cheating and all of this is a part of who they are. And when you stand up against the truth, knowing that this is who they are, then suddenly the mortification makes sense, as they use these things in their toolbox, in their repertoire, in order to hide their true self, as their true self is rooted in shame and fear. Now, according to Sam, the narcissist reflects coping strategies they used in childhood, and these were based on shame and fear. To dissect this a little further, the parent of the narcissist used fear and shame to manage the child's behavior. This is now the baseline for the narcissist's character, as they are reactionary individuals. They react to you. They don't respond to you. They react to you in such a way that is either of benefit to them or harms them. When you react to their charm, their reaction is one that is self-regulatory and one that micromanages their self-worth and assumes that the narcissist is perceived as being an individual who is agreeable, likable, and perfect. This is why I say that they need to control you, as their control of you helps to control their shame and fear dysregulation. So when you do not react to their charm in the appropriate way that they want you to react, the opposite reaction of them happens. They react in a way that tries to self-regulate the perceived flaw within them. It seems to be that when you are agreeable to the narcissist, they take that as, oh, they like me, I'm likable. What's not to like about me? Of course they like me. But when you stand your ground to your healthy boundaries and say, no, and you go gray rock and you have no real expression of emotion on your face, as you're not emotionally reacting to their diabolical, disastrous ways, they start to internalize that and they think, okay, they're not agreeing with me anymore. What the heck? What's going on? They don't like me anymore? And if they're assuming that you no longer like them, then they take that to heart and they have no choice but to look at their fear and shame. Your reaction of their superficiality forces them to face the reality of themselves that they have tried to cover up through controlling mechanisms. They have no choice but to retreat to old defense mechanisms that are familiar to them. Shame and fear, which leads to rejection. The article that Sam writes doesn't go into depth, as I'm doing my best to explain the article because it's a little bit reading like a psychologist and it can get a little bit confusing. However, to add to this, as again, it makes sense to me and I'm hoping that it does to you, I'm just sharing with you what I have experienced myself in narcissistic relationships. There are different subtypes of narcissists, and many narcissists do not reach the state of mortification. However, the grandiose narcissists do. These are the narcissists that fall under the subtype of malignant narcissism. They rely so much on their ego as a strategy of defense that when they become frustrated with their targets or their objects of affections that they abuse, the malignancy is then exposed. The malignancy is exposed when the repressed feelings of trauma surface. This is what happens when we empathetic individuals deny the narcissist access to our lives in the way that they had before. The repression surfaces that the narcissist has to resort to behaviors they expressed in their childhood home. And this can look quite terrifying if you don't know what you're seeing. They use splitting. That's the all or nothing kind of thinking. This is do it my way or take the highway approach. They resort to denial, which involves lying, even when the facts are presented. They also retreat into fantasy type behaviors. They make believe stories. Even if you have facts, they make believe events that happened or didn't happen. And this conflicts with your reality, as your reality and their reality is extremely different. They just cannot grasp the set of facts as you do. They spin tall tales as a child would in order to keep from getting reprimanded. And oftentimes in that childhood home, the parents' reprimand meant rejection. Narcissistic mortification begins in the narcissist in childhood. According to this article, the narcissist retreats into two types of mortifications that are good for us to know. There's internal mortification, as described as having a struggle against what is perceived as right and wrong. In religious circles, an internal mortification might be described as having a struggle against pride and maybe self-love. An external mortification would then be used by the narcissist to appease the eternal struggle against that pride and self-love, and that would be just to fast from food. This would be an outward means to confront, to conform the internal struggle within. It's all about control. Controlling the inside by controlling the outside. Controlling the outside controls the inside. It's subduing the spirit by subduing the flesh. Subdue the flesh, you subdue the spirit. Now these are temporary solutions, of course, and the logic of the narcissist only carries superficial weight, as the short-term effects are only what is considered. With mortification, the narcissist is overcome by the dynamics of the internal and external aspects, and the only means to cope is through repression and dissociation. Repression is the unconscious blocking of unpleasant emotions, the impulses and memories and thoughts of the conscious mind. The narcissist can repress their targets in this way, and the interaction and scenarios that they have with their targets, as this is why it is easy for the narcissist to move on after they have discarded their significant source of supply. Disassociation is when the narcissist becomes detached, forgetting specific times, places, events, and people. The narcissist may become disassociated from their thoughts, personal events, even their sense of self. These two means might be the only means that the narcissist uses to cope alongside cognitive deficits. This is simply that the narcissist may feel omnipotent and omniscient, godlike, in their forms of grandiosity. They may have an overreaching sense of entitlement. This may accompany paranoid projections, as they have a sense of invincibility. The narcissist has an innate need for control. This is across the board. This cannot be dismissed. With mortification, they have lost control over you, over life, and over themselves. To stop the mortification, the narc needs to regain control. But how? This is extremely difficult, according to Sam Vaknin. If you see narcissistic mortification in the narcissist that you are with, chances are they will never, ever, ever regain control over you. And this is something that is difficult for them to bear. This dismantles them. You are the one that got away. They may regain control over themselves just a little by finding another target, but they never recover. They will repeat this internalization and externalization mortification on their other targets. And it just gets more severe with time. They gain a little control, but they will never regain the full and total control over themselves ever again. And according to Sam Vaknin, I would like to share a quote, that the reason for only partial control is because the damage cannot be forgotten, it cannot be forgiven, and therefore it is not effectively dealt with, end quote. Mortification is considered to be what Sam defines as being an extreme and painfully intolerable form of shame-induced traumatic depressive anxiety. Have you ever seen a narcissist demask themselves? This is intimidating. It's that temper tantrum when you put up those barriers that say that the narcissist can no longer overstep their boundaries with you. It is intimidating and shameful to watch. They have nothing to lose, and they do not care that you see them at their worst. That's because mortification is a shame-driven anxiety that threatens the ego of the narcissist, as it allows them to become aware of their limits and their faults. When the empathetic individual exposes the narc by demasking them, as the empath is no longer vulnerable to the narc's tricks of the trade hidden in their master toolbox, the narcissist is forced to see themselves as who they truly are. They are shameful. As I mentioned in my Udemy course, they are obscure. And this is what they have been trying to avoid all along. When the narcissist's charming ways no longer work, when the hoovering, the triangulation, the love bombing, the gaslighting, projection, lying, coercion no longer work on us, then the narcissist experiences shame and humiliation. They take our stance personal. We are not intending to humiliate or shame them by our rigid stance. Holding ourselves accountable to our own self-worth, that's healthy. And this is how we stand up to them. Just as how God allows the narcissist to expose in us what we cannot yet see, the narc is given the same opportunity with us. God uses us. However, the narcissist does not see to heal. They see to reveal. And that revealing is a hellfire that burns them to their core. In researching mortification, I believe that the narcissist's collapse follows shortly after the narcissist attempts to reconcile and restore themselves in one of two ways, to no avail. The deflated narcissist, or the vulnerable narcissist, inflates or idealizes their targets to regain that lost connection in their narcissistic mortification. And then there's the inflated narcissist who devalues their target as they are humiliated, as their vulnerabilities are attacked verbally or physically as they seek revenge. If the narcissist cannot recover their self-image by the two methods of through idealization or through the reality of just revenge seeking. They will sink further into mortification and they will not recover. This is because the narcissist has to project their self-image onto the target. And if we have barriers up that says, no, you're not getting emotionally into me. This then shows the narcissist that the object of their affection or hate, they have to rid themselves of their deficient experiences of self to which they cannot do. So what happens? What do they do? Well, here's the last resort, and here's where it gets really sick and twisted. The malignant narcissist, the psychopathic narcissist, the borderline personality disordered narcissist, they choose specific types of people. They are attracted to specific types of people that can potentially bring about this mortification, as they intend to bring it out in themselves on purpose. This is all subconscious, of course. This is not conscious behavior. This has to do with subconscious imprinting that the child narcissist grew up with. It seems that mortification is formed early on in the childhood home through one specific parent, the mother. So you will see narcissistic mortification within the male narcissist predominantly. I'm going to assume that this article that Sam wrote uses male to women relationships as an example to explain that mortification is more commonly seen in males than women. However, further on in the article, he does use women as an example. However, for me, I'm going to go with what I know. I know the male narcissists in my life, in my past, and even more recent. They are the destructive narcissists. They are the destructured narcissists who show narcissistic mortification because they are the more malignant narcissists. If you are a male and you have experienced with a female who goes into the mortification, I'd like to know. Share with me. Scoot me off an email. I'd like to talk with you. When mortification is used to regulate the narc's internal structure by specifically using targets to regulate their internal and external mortification. Okay, let me say that again. When mortification is used to regulate the narc's internal structure by specifically using targets to regulate their internal and their external mortification. Remember, I used the example of the internal being the struggle in the spirit of, pride versus self-love, and the external using fasting to regulate the internal. The narcissist uses specific people to regulate the internal and external mortifications. It's a way that the narcissist can opt out of a committed relationship. They find within people specific vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities might be seen to the narcissist as being weak. However, they are not. They are what make us strong. The narcissist targets those who have been married, those who have children, those who are agreeable in nature and easy to get along with, those who are desiring and wanting or needing physical contact, and those who are promiscuous. The narcissist uses these individuals as a fail-safe. They regulate and vacillate between the internal and external mortifications, and they use that on specific people in order to instigate a specific reaction in their target that will instigate a specific reaction in the narcissist, and that narcissist will then internalize that shame and fear and externalize it in the various coping ways through idealization or hatred and shunning and just revenge. This is a way we would say that the narcissist gets his or her supply. However, it's deeper than that. The narcissist has to use these methods in order to regulate those internal and external vulnerabilities. They use mortification as a means to stay detached and non-committal from their targets. Because even though they want to be attached, even though they want that love, the deep-seated pressures from childhood dictates that if they get attached, they're going to get hurt. And so they use this to regulate. They set themselves up unknowingly. They seek a temporary solution, but really they are desiring the long-term positive effects of finding a healthy attachment with somebody. But wanting and needing and desiring are different things to the narcissist. The narcissist uses the things that we have experienced in life before as a means to gain entry into our lives. So no one is immune of the diabolical antics of the mortified narcissist. The narcissist uses their targets as objects in order to regulate their own internal and external vulnerabilities. They need, want, and desire that commitment, but they don't know how to operate within the commitment because they don't know what commitment looks like. It's something that they naturally fear, and their mortification exposes them to their deep-seated fear of abandonment. So this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're always focused on abandonment, and they unknowingly set themselves up to be abandoned as they abandon their targets first, or they force their targets into abandoning them. There is no other way with the narcissist. For the malignant narcissist, most often times you'll find that mortification is sexually arousing. Yeah. This involves sadism and masochism, as the malignant narcissist is also attached to these dynamics. There is nothing sacred about sex when it comes to this malignancy. People are used as pawns, and anyone can be a friend until they become a foe. When the need can no longer be filled, and when that person is no longer useful, the narc now considers that friend an enemy. And normally, if you have a problem with somebody, you either work it out or you cut ties with that individual and you do not speak to them again. However, with the narc, they keep their friends and enemies close. If the friend turns foe, the narc will still keep them around as they use the reality type of mortification to reenact unresolved historical trauma and conflict with his mother who mortified them. If the person remains a friend, the narc uses a fantasy-based mortification in order to keep the relationship in a state of elation. Pale example of this would be for a male narcissist to ask his female partner to fulfill some sexual fantasy. This fantasy may include an extramarital affair while the male narc secretly watches from the closet. Okay, we've all seen those Dr. Phil shows. Now, this is to invoke jealousy in the mortified narcissist. So the mortified narcissist holds his partner up in a state of elation and fantasy. And that target is well thought of is well thought of and put on a pedestal because the individual is doing what the narcissist wants. However, this female target then becomes the object of the narcissist's dissatisfaction, as what the scenario was meant to do was to invoke jealousy in the mortified narcissist, as this is self-inflicted torture, as this is a setup, a lead up for the narcissist to give reason to not commit to the female and instead toss her aside and discard her because she's replaceable, because she's just like everybody else. She's a cheater, she's this, she's that, the other. And this is a fantasy-driven type dependence where the narcissist does his best to hold on to something, but his sick fantasies force him to face the reality that she's not devoted to him as he might think. The narcissist's mind and heart plays on himself, as this scenario sets the narcissist up for perceived abandonment. A loving individual does not abandon people. However, the narcissist needs to feed off of abandonment because that is all they grew up with. They fear love. They fear commitment because they never had that security of that growing up. So they have to create a scenario where there is commitment. But that scenario that they create also feeds their fear in order to feel regulated. Even though the narc would insist that the female participate willingly to the affair, the narc then has reason to feel abandoned. They have reason to discard the female partner. Instead of pushing her away by calling her names, he instead uses flattery and sustained coaxing that would have the woman in his life leave due to her feeling of uncomfortable. She's dealing with shame and her own thoughts and feelings of her actions and wanting to talk to him about it, and he's not emotionally available for her, but instead asks her sick and twisted questions. Now, for the other situation where the mortified narc puts the woman, their female target, in reality situations, this is where he does push her away in very cold and calculating ways. He doesn't have to do much. He remains aloof. He stonewalls her. They are not active participants in a committed relationship, and she's questioning, where do I stand? Now, the narcissist likes having the woman around for sexual comfort. However, when she begins to question the relationship, and when she tries to pin him down to properly define what they have together, he ignores her. When she persists and tries to correct him on wayward behavior, he's really trying to understand him. The narc then decides to verbalize how intrusive she is. And he places her in the position of his mother in the childhood home. Under no circumstances will this narcissist be controlled. He retreats into childhood memory and defies the woman's requests and any attempts to get the relationship back on track in a mature and wholesome way. He sees her requests as controlling and wrong, intrusive in the same way, and he feels that she is correcting him in the same way that his mother corrected him. He will then ignore her, stonewall her, offer breadcrumbs, avoid her, use passive aggression, and push her away from him, using belittling comments and demeaning her, debasing her, either to her face or to other people in front of her. His ways become very cold and calculating, and no longer is she viewed as an individual, but just like his mother. To be clear, the article does not make a distinction that mortification is seen more in men. It is only assumed at this point. When the people in the narcissist's life dwindle or suddenly are gone, mortification is used to regulate the narcissist's internal dysfunction. And mortification worsens over time. And when the narcissist finally comes to a point in life where their sources of supply are dwindling or cut off, then this forces the narcissist to internalize their reality and seek therapy because they cannot regain control of their inner dialogue. If they do not seek therapy, and most do not, they then begin to spiral downwards into that narcissistic collapse that I talk about in another video entitled Narcissistic Collapse. As most narcissists then turn to self-isolation and live their remaining years aloof and alone, as eventually they succumb to suicide. It is seen in the malignant types, as it is commonly seen in those who have borderline personality disorder and psychopathy. Borderline disorder is extremely dangerous, as I share this with you in my Udemy course. It is what Sam Vaknin calls a secondary psychopath. People who suffer from borderline personality disorder are extremely volatile and dangerous. They switch between the mortification of their reality and fantasy like nobody's business. They regulate the repression, denial, splitting, disassociation, and other defense mechanisms in attempts to remain in control, and it's a roller coaster of emotion when you're with them. They switch like night and day, and you will not be aware of what happened, what was said, or what was done to provoke their switch. For this reason, borderline disorder is often confused with dissociative identity disorder, and the narcissist may even assume this is what they are going through, and they will project that onto you. They will accuse you of being the psychopath. They will accuse you of having the split personality, when in fact they know exactly who they are and what's going on with them. So be mindful of that, because projection is a way that the narcissist tells on themselves. Known as DID, dissociative identity disorder is extremely rare, and it is easy to confuse with borderline personality disorder because both disorders lose grip on reality. The targets of the individual who expresses borderline personality disorder often feel like they are dealing with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Oh yes, absolutely. Borderlines seek out mortification to feel alive, as they are easily bored. They are thrill seekers and risk takers, so they vacillate between the fantasy and the reality within the mortification that I talked about and gave examples of earlier. They are drama queens. They are drama makers, as when their crazy making antics upset your relationship with them, you know then that they are enduring deep feelings of self-doubt and depreciation. So this is the time for you to realize that you should not take what they're doing personal. They engage in self-punishment to regulate these internal feelings. It has nothing to do with you, although it may feel like it has everything to do with you, and they may force you to try to accept the blame. Don't take the blame. Don't accept their responsibility. They turn to crazy making, causing chaos and drama that seems to come out of the blue. They are hot-headed, and that is because their borderline disorder has them like that rumbling volcano that could burst at any moment. You never know what will set them off. Mortification in borderlines is preemptive and self-inflicted, as they too fear abandonment. They abandon the individual before the individual abandons them. They anticipate abandonment through the entire relationship. There is nothing that you can do or say to alleviate their fears. This is deep-seated within them. They anticipate abandonment, that they push individuals away by creating a scenario that has them abandoned. And then they cope by becoming disassociative and show signs of psychopathy. What might this look like? Well, you could be enjoying a nice conversation and you say something that triggers them. They assume you meant one thing when you clearly meant another. You could compliment them on their clothing, for goodness sake, and they assume they hear a condescending tone in your voice. You could laugh at a joke, and they internalize your laughter as they assume that you are laughing at them, not with them. They make plans with you and delay your plans and even put those plans off, and when you do this, as sometimes this is normal, as you get delayed and you have things that come up and family meetings to attend to, so you have to call and make other arrangements with them, they then see this as an attempt to abandon them, as they assume that you just don't want to see them at all. You're trying to be nice and let them go gently, when in reality you do have legitimate reasons why you have to put off your meeting with them, but no amount of explaining will work. They believe what they believe as they retreat into this fantasy and make-believe sort of thing, and their reality is their reality. Even when you do your best to make up that perceived wrong, no amount of restitution or catering to them will make up for the perceived wrongs that they think you've committed. The wrong that is perceived can never, ever, ever, ever be made right. This sounds so convoluted, and it is. The more convoluted, the more dangerous the narcissist becomes. Mortification is a dangerous stage in the narcissist's life. It is dangerous for the targets and it is dangerous for them. For the targets, it can become life-threatening as the verbal violence becomes verbal torture and physical torture. Just because the narcissist has yet to be violent with you, do not assume that they will never be violent with you. It's just a matter of time. The narcissist creates an environment of instability through their self-depreciation and self-loathing that is projected onto you. When you leave, they can no longer project. They will continue to blame you while facing the reality of your rejection of them, which validates their self-rejection, which validates their mother's rejection of them. Outside of borderline personality disorder, the mortification is not self-inflicted. Mortification happens in narcissists who have lost control over manipulating their targets. For the borderline personality and the psychopath, mortification is a way of life for them. It's common ground for them. This is something that happens every single moment of the day without a reprieve. They forever vacillate back and forth between internal and external mortifications, fantasy and reality mortifications. And with each person, the mortification worsens. They self-destruct over time, slowly. And at the end, this is what leads to their self-destruction. They lose the ability to control others through manipulation, and they succumb to the debilitating effects to endure the narcissist collapse. However, in the malignant narcissist, the covert narcissist, the grandiose narcissist, when they reach a state of mortification, it is because they exhausted every tool in their narcissistic toolkit and they have lost control and can no longer manipulate their targets. The undulating roller coaster ride of seeking out targets that can offer specific types of supply in attempts to recreate a trauma bond is also one between mother and son. There is no recovery, there's only management. Like most narcissists, any narcissist enduring mortification will only seek therapy as a last resort. The outcome of mortification is grim, as many narcissists succumb to this phase and slip into narcissistic collapse, especially the aging narcissist. Mortification is the cause of the narcissist losing control over their targets, as the narcissist needs to control people so that they remain in control over their internal emotional structures. I know this sounds repeating, however, I'm trying to alleviate any confusion within this. So please just bear with me. We're almost through this. The dysregulation within the narcissist when they are going through the mortification is never corrected. It is never managed internally, but instead externally, through manipulating other people's emotional states of how they want the individual to perceive them. The empathetic individual who becomes educated to the narcissistic ways is a learned and knowledgeable individual who truly does become the enemy of the narcissist, but not in the way that you think. We are always loving. We always give love. And, you know, I think part of us will never stop loving the narcissist. Not that we want to go back, but we do care. We don't want to see them suffer. However, as I said before, God uses us to take them out. We are the ones to set karma in motion by taking the narc back after a healing process within us has begun, as our healing leads to their demise. God uses the narcissist to expose us to ourselves, and God uses us to expose the narcissist to themselves. The competition is over, as we come out stronger, as we ultimately win in the end. If you have been discarded and abused by a narcissist, know this, that at some point in the narcissist's life, they will meet their match. God will send someone to come along who knows the score and can keep score with the narcissist. That someone will be strong and become your voice, as their strength in their healing will be the final straw for the narcissist. The narcissist will not see the empath coming, as the empath will be a force to be reckoned with. When you are healed and made strong in knowing the narcissist's evil ways, you too will be guided and used by God to stand in the gap for those who are weaker, who cannot yet help themselves. The narcissist won't see you coming, my dear, and you will see firsthand the narcissist's demise. This is not to gloat. This is only to show you how God uses you to judge the narcissist. Their days of manipulating people are over and done. I am hopeful that this video will guide you into your healing so that you can find true love, firstly within. It is my greatest desire that you find the love you deserve, as it is my greatest hope you find healing that allows you to release yourself of bitterness and hate. If you need someone to talk to, I'm always an email away. Blessings.